October 8, 1918, Argonne Forest, France. Corporal Alvin York crouches behind a fallen log, his Springfield rifle still warm from firing 17 rounds in less than 2 minutes. Before him, approximately 30 German soldiers lie dead or wounded, scattered across a hillside in the positions where they fell. Behind him, 7 American soldiers, all that remain of his 17-man patrol, struggle to control over 80 German prisoners already captured. And directly ahead, emerging from a concrete bunker with his hands raised, walks a German officer in an immaculate uniform, calling orders in German that York doesn't understand, but whose meaning is perfectly clear: surrender. York's hands are steady despite what he's just done. He's killed more men in the past 10 minutes than he's seen die in 6 months of combat. He's a Tennessee farmer who didn't want to fight, who filed for conscientious objector status because his Christian faith forbade killing. Yet here he stands, surrounded by the evidence of marksmanship so precise that witnesses will spend decades arguing whether one man could actually have achieved what the bodies prove happened. The German officer approaches slowly, hands still raised, speaking rapidly. York doesn't speak German, but the officer's gestures toward the bunker behind him communicate clearly enough. More men inside. Many more. The officer is offering surrender. Not just his own surrender, but surrender of his entire command. York understands immediately what this means. If German soldiers emerge from that bunker, his 7 men will be overwhelmed by numbers. The prisoners already captured will see an opportunity to resist. The situation will collapse into chaos. But if he accepts the surrender, if he can maintain control, he might walk out of this forest with the largest single-handed prisoner capture of the war. He makes his decision in seconds. York points his rifle at the officer and gestures toward the American lines, approximately 500 meters through the forest. The officer understands. He turns and calls orders toward the bunker. German soldiers begin emerging. 10, 20, 30. York counts them as they file out, hands raised, faces showing the shock of men who thought they were winning 30 seconds ago. The final count will show 132 German prisoners, 35 machine guns captured or destroyed, and casualty estimates of 25 to 50 German soldiers killed or wounded. The action lasted approximately 25 minutes from first contact to final surrender. One American corporal, armed with a rifle and pistol, had broken a German defensive position that had stopped an entire American battalion for 2 days. York doesn't know yet that this morning will transform him from an unknown soldier into the most decorated American of World War I. He doesn't know that General John Pershing will call this the greatest thing accomplished by any private soldier of all the armies of Europe. He doesn't know that his name will become synonymous with courage, and that debates will rage for decades about whether one man actually did what the evidence proves he did. All York knows right now is that he needs to march 132 German prisoners through 500 meters of contested forest without losing control. He organizes his 7 men to guard the flanks, places the German officer at the front of the column, and begins walking. The prisoners walk ahead of him. York walks behind with his pistol drawn. Every few steps, he glances back, checking for German counterattack. None comes. The forest is silent, except for footsteps and the occasional German voice, asking questions York doesn't answer. Alvin Cullum. York was born December 13th, 1887, in a 2-room log cabin in Pall Mall, Tennessee, a mountain community in Fentress County, where poverty was normal and formal education was rare. York's father was a blacksmith and subsistence farmer. The family owned 75 acres of rocky hillside land that produced enough corn and vegetables to survive, but generated almost no cash income. York received approximately 9 months of formal schooling, learning to read and write at a basic level. He worked on the family farm, hunted to provide meat, and developed marksmanship skills that were common among Appalachian mountain boys. Shooting wasn't sport. It was food acquisition. A missed shot meant the family ate less. York became an exceptional marksman because missing wasn't acceptable. In 1911, York's father died, leaving Alvin as the primary provider for his mother and 10 siblings. He worked as a logger and construction laborer, earning $1 per day when work was available. Evenings, he frequented local bars and developed a reputation for drinking and fighting. By his own later admission, York was headed toward a wasted life. The transformation came in 1914, when York attended a revival meeting at the Church of Christ in Christian Union. The preaching convicted him. On January 1, 1915, York committed to his faith, quit drinking, and became a regular churchgoer. The church taught pacifism, that killing was sin under all circumstances. York embraced this teaching completely. When he received his draft notice in June 1917, he faced an immediate crisis of conscience. York filed for conscientious objector status based on religious grounds. His application was denied. The draft board determined that the Church of Christ in Christian Union was not a recognized peace church like the Quakers or Mennonites. York's claim was rejected. He was ordered to report for induction on November 14, 1917. York reported as ordered, but brought his Bible and continued arguing his case through training. His company commander, Captain Edward Danforth, and battalion commander, Major George Buxton, spent hours debating theology and patriotism with York. Buxton, himself a religious man, used scripture to argue that defensive war could be morally justified. He cited Luke 22:36, where Jesus told disciples to buy swords. He discussed Romans 13 about submitting to governing authorities. York wrestled with these arguments for weeks. In December 1917, Buxton granted York a 10-day leave to return home and resolve his conscience. York spent the time praying, reading scripture, and hiking in the mountains. On the final day of leave, he climbed a mountain overlooking his home valley and spent hours in prayer. He later described achieving peace about his decision. He would serve. If called to kill, he would kill, but he would never kill unnecessarily or take life casually. York returned from leave and committed fully to military service. His marksmanship immediately distinguished him. During rifle qualification, York scored expert marksman with perfect or near-perfect scores. His mountain hunting background gave him skills that urban recruits lacked: fieldcraft, camouflage, patience, and ability to estimate range without instruments. By June 1918, York had been promoted to corporal and assigned to Company G, 328th Infantry Regiment, 82nd Division. The division shipped to France in May 1918, arriving as the final German spring offensive was failing. The 82nd Division would participate in the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, the largest American operation of World War I. The Meuse-Argonne Offensive began September 26, 1918. The American Expeditionary Force committed over 1.2 million men to break through German defensive lines in the Argonne Forest and advance toward the key railway hub at Sedan. The offensive was the war's largest American operation and would continue until the armistice on November 11, 1918. By early October, the offensive had stalled. German machine gun positions in the densely forested terrain stopped American advances repeatedly. The 82nd Division was assigned to capture German positions on Hill 223, a fortified ridge controlling the Decauville Railway. German forces held the hill with multiple machine gun nests positioned to create interlocking fields of fire. Previous American attacks had failed with heavy casualties. On October 7, 1918, Company G of the 328th Infantry received orders to attack German positions on Hill 223 the following morning. The attack would be part of a larger divisional push. Company G would advance through the forest, locate German machine gun positions, and neutralize them to permit the main force to advance. At 0600 hours on October 8, 1918, Company G began its advance. Almost immediately, German machine guns opened fire from concealed positions. The company took casualties and went to ground. Sergeant Bernard Early, commanding the 2nd Platoon, assembled a 17-man patrol with orders to circle behind the German positions and attack from the rear. The patrol included Corporal York, acting as second in command. The group moved through the forest for approximately 20 minutes, attempting to locate German positions from the rear. At approximately 06:15 hours, the patrol encountered 2 German medics in a clearing. The medics surrendered immediately, but their presence indicated German positions were nearby. Moments later, the patrol stumbled directly into a German command post in a small valley. Approximately 15 to 20 German soldiers were visible in the clearing, many without weapons immediately at hand. Sergeant Early ordered them to surrender. The Germans complied, hands rising in surrender. Then German machine guns positioned on the hillside above the clearing opened fire. The gunners had clear fields of fire down into the valley, where the American patrol stood exposed. Within seconds, 6 Americans were killed, including Sergeant Early. 3 more were wounded. The remaining 9 Americans dove for cover behind logs and in shell craters. York found himself behind a fallen log approximately 40 meters from the nearest German machine gun position. The log provided cover from direct fire, but left him exposed if he attempted to retreat. Other surviving Americans were scattered across the clearing, pinned down, unable to move without being killed. York assessed the situation in seconds. The German machine guns were positioned on a hillside approximately 50 meters away. He could see muzzle flashes from at least 3 positions. The gunners were focused on the other Americans in the clearing, trying to finish off the patrol. York was positioned on their flank where he could see them, but they couldn't see him without turning their weapons. York began firing. His first target was the nearest machine gun crew, approximately 40 meters distant. He aimed carefully, just as he had aimed at turkeys in Tennessee mountains. The first shot killed the gunner. The assistant gunner moved to take over the weapon. York's second shot killed him. A third German moved toward the gun. York's third shot dropped him. York worked methodically through targets, firing single-aimed shots from his Springfield rifle. Each shot killed or wounded a German soldier. The range was close enough that missing was nearly impossible for a marksman of York's skill. He fired approximately 15 to 20 rounds in less than 2 minutes, emptying his rifle's 5-round magazine 3 times and reloading from ammunition pouches. The German position responded by sending infantry to charge York's position. Approximately 6 German soldiers with bayonets fixed rushed down the hillside toward the log where York crouched. York dropped his empty rifle and drew his .45 caliber M1911 pistol. What happened next would be debated for decades. York later described shooting the charging Germans from back to front, killing the rear man first, then the next working forward. This prevented the lead Germans from seeing their rear comrades fall and continuing the charge until all were down. York claimed he learned this technique hunting turkeys in Tennessee. If you shot the lead bird, the rest would scatter, but if you shot from back to front, the flock kept walking into range. Whether York actually employed this tactic, or whether he simply shot targets as they presented themselves, the result was undeniable. All 6 Germans fell dead within meters of York's position. The entire action took perhaps 15 seconds. York had fired 6 shots with his pistol and achieved 6 kills at ranges of 10 to 20 meters. The German defense collapsed. A German officer, later identified as First Lieutenant Paul Vollmer, commander of the 120th Württemberg Landwehr Regiment's 1st Battalion, emerged from cover calling for ceasefire. Vollmer spoke some English and understood that his position was untenable. The machine guns had been silenced. His best infantry assault had failed. The American soldier behind the log had killed over 20 men in less than 5 minutes and showed no sign of missing. Vollmer offered surrender. Not just personal surrender, but surrender of his entire command. He would order his men to lay down weapons if York would guarantee their safety as prisoners of war. York accepted immediately. He ordered the German prisoners already captured at the start of the fight, approximately 20 men, to be gathered. Then Vollmer called orders toward the bunker and hillside positions. German soldiers began emerging. York counted them, keeping his pistol ready but not firing. The Germans complied, understanding they faced a marksman who hadn't missed a shot. The prisoner column organized quickly. York placed Lieutenant Vollmer at the front, with orders to lead the march toward American lines. The other German prisoners fell in behind. York's surviving American soldiers, 7 men, still combat-capable, guarded the flanks. York walked at the rear of the column with his pistol drawn. The march covered approximately 500 meters through contested forest. German positions were scattered throughout the area. The column would pass within sight of German troops, who might attempt rescue or counterattack. York knew the march was the operation's most dangerous phase. If German forces realized what was happening, they could ambush the column and free the prisoners. The column encountered a German dugout approximately 100 meters from the capture site. York ordered Vollmer to call for surrender. German soldiers emerged. Another 15 prisoners added to the column. 200 meters further, another German position surrendered after seeing the prisoner column. Another 20 prisoners. By the time York reached American lines at approximately 0640 hours, the prisoner count had reached 132 Germans. York also brought 7 American soldiers and collected 35 German machine guns that his patrol had captured or neutralized. The march had taken approximately 25 minutes. Not a single shot was fired during the return journey. York reported to his battalion commander, Major Buxton, who initially didn't believe the report. Buxton counted the prisoners himself, confirmed 132 men, and immediately began investigating what had happened. The interrogation of German prisoners, combined with testimony from the 7 surviving American soldiers, confirmed York's account. One man had broken a German defensive position that had held up an entire American battalion. The action's immediate result was tactical. American forces advanced past Hill 223, continuing the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, but the strategic result was propaganda gold for the American Expeditionary Force. General John Pershing personally investigated the action and declared York's achievement the greatest thing accomplished by any private soldier of all the armies of Europe. York received the Medal of Honor, America's highest military decoration, presented by General Pershing on February 5, 1919. He also received the French Croix de Guerre with Palm, the Italian Croce di Guerra, and the Montenegro Medal for Bravery. York was promoted to sergeant and became the most decorated American soldier of World War I. Newspapers exaggerated the story, claiming York captured 1,300 prisoners, a claim York himself never made. The official U.S. Army record confirmed 132 prisoners, 35 machine guns captured, and approximately 25 German soldiers killed. The exaggeration didn't diminish York's achievement. 132 prisoners captured single-handedly was extraordinary by any measure. York returned to Tennessee in May 1919 and received a hero's welcome. He refused multiple offers for commercial endorsements and book deals, believing it was wrong to profit from military service. Instead, York worked to establish a school in his hometown, believing education was the key to lifting mountain communities from poverty. In 1941, Warner Brothers released Sergeant York, a biographical film starring Gary Cooper. York cooperated with the film, using his proceeds to fund the York Agricultural Institute, a school he founded in Jamestown, Tennessee. The film became one of 1941's highest-grossing pictures and introduced York's story to millions of Americans as the United States prepared to enter World War II. York's achievement sparked debate that continues today. Could one man actually accomplish what the evidence proves happened? Skeptics argue the story was exaggerated for propaganda purposes. Supporters cite the testimony of 7 American witnesses, the interrogation of German prisoners, and the physical evidence of 132 prisoners marched to American lines. The German perspective, revealed through prisoner interrogations conducted in the days following the action, confirms York's achievement. Lieutenant Paul Vollmer, the German officer who surrendered his command, testified that York's marksmanship was so precise and deadly that continued resistance seemed not just futile, but suicidal. He described watching York fire repeatedly without missing, each shot killing or wounding a German soldier. The accuracy was unlike anything Vollmer had witnessed in 4 years of combat across multiple fronts. Other German prisoners provided similar accounts during interrogation. Soldiers described watching their comrades fall with every shot York fired, never seeing him miss a target. One machine gunner reported that York killed 3 men in succession who attempted to man his weapon, gunner, assistant gunner, ammunition bearer, each dropped by single shots before they could bring the weapon to bear. The psychological impact was devastating. German soldiers accustomed to massed rifle fire suddenly faced a shooter who killed with every round, creating panic that broke unit cohesion. The decision to surrender was entirely rational. Fighting meant certain death against a marksman who didn't miss. York died September 2nd, 1964, at age 76 in Nashville, Tennessee. He was buried in Wolf River Cemetery in Pall Mall. His funeral was attended by dignitaries, including Tennessee Governor Frank Clement and Sergeant Major of the Army William Wooldridge. York's grave remains a site of pilgrimage for those who study military history and individual courage. The York story endures because it represents the citizen-soldier ideal, an ordinary man thrust into extraordinary circumstances who performed with skill, courage, and moral clarity. York didn't seek glory. He sought to survive and protect his fellow soldiers. The fact that his actions resulted in legendary achievement doesn't diminish that his motivation was simple. Do the job. Protect your men. Go home. If this story inspired you, hit like and subscribe for more true stories of courage under fire. Share this with anyone interested in World War I or military history. Drop a comment. Was York the greatest soldier of WFOI or just the luckiest? Thanks for watching.